guys, welcome back to Paint with Josh. Today we did an 18 by 24 inch commission painting for a client. She loves it, turned out fantastic. I love it, you love it. That's why you want to paint it. So check the description down below, find all the colors you need, make sure you get your canvas nice and wet, get ready to throw some paint on it. We're gonna do it just like this. Hey guys, back again. Today we have our Bob Ross liquid clear oil paint that we're about to put on our 18 by 24 inch canvas. We're gonna do a commission piece today for a lady named Petra who lives in Utah, contacted us and said, hey, I'd love you to redo this picture right down here, but as like a summer scene. Do you think you could do that? And I said, of course we could do that. She said, do you think you could do it on video? I said, of course. We love doing everything on video around here at Paint with Josh, and that's what we do. So, gotta teach everybody how to paint. And all we're doing here is covering the canvas with the liquid clear, and what that does is allow all of our oil paints to blend easily together versus trying to smush them across all that dry canvas. It just doesn't work. So, if you slide forward through this section, that's okay. I totally understand. But if you've never put on the liquid clear before, you just want to stretch it to its total limits. You don't want to have it be too thick in a certain area or too thin. And then as soon as we get done, we're going to scrub it all off with a paper towel. And you're like, well, why do we put it on there if we're just going to wipe it off with a paper towel? And the point is, no matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to get it as thin as you want with just your brush, right? In order for us to get it on there and really get it all covered in a uniform way, you almost have to put on too much, which is why we take the paper towel at the end and wipe it off. Try not to hit my phone with my brush here. That's nerves. Don't hit your phone with your brush if it's sitting right there. That's a bravery test. There we go. Blah, 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 blah. You can totally tell the difference of what my dominant hand is, because it sure gets tired, and this takes a while doing it left-handed for sure. You just want to stretch it. Stretch it. Don't push too hard into your canvas, especially if you have an 18 by 24. There's a piece of wood back there. So you don't want to push too hard because it's really going to stretch the canvas out. And it's going to make it all wavy, right? And you can use those little clips you can put in the back. Or I've heard you can spray the back with water and it will tighten itself up. So different things, but try Google, right? First place to go is Google, and ask Google, because there are millions of people out there who will probably have the answer to your question. There we go. Just going over it back and forth, trying to make sure it's really in all the little pores of the canvas. And now it's super wet, right? And we're gonna really take our paper towel and wipe it all off. All right, let's wash this brush. Gotta get the brushes dry. Gotta get the brushes dry. Always dab them off on a paper towel, because even after you dab them off on a paper towel, they're still wet. And you don't want them to be too wet. Okay, let's take our paper towels, grab off a couple, fold it up into a little square is all I use. A little square, just like that. All right, you go over it about 3-4 times, you've covered the whole canvas. Wipe it off. Make sure you kind of push hard. Get the residual stuff off, right? Fold it over. Come back at it with another dry section. And all we're doing is kind of smushing the paint, covering the canvas, flattening it out, and getting all the excess that we don't want off. Right? Even though it's gonna look drier, it's still wet. Bam, just like that. You don't want to have too much on there. Liquid clear can run if it's too thick. And that's not what you want at all. Don't want it to run. All right, now we're going to take another brush, go over all these little marks, get them all out. And we can tell that the canvas is nice and slick across the entire surface. That's what I wanted it to be. All right, now we're going to grab our colors here. We have sap green, phthalo green, bright red, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, dark sienna, which is the lighter brown, Van Dyke brown, which is the darker brown, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, midnight black, and titanium white. We'll also use a little bit of liquid white. I like to hold it in a little jar or a lid, an empty lid that you don't use anymore. And, you know, when you need your paint thinner and your odorless mineral spirits and all of that stuff. All right, let's get painting. We got to throw a sky and water in simultaneously. It's going to be hard to match when we do it, if we try to do it later. So, the best part about this painting is she gave me total creative control, right? Which is like, it's amazing. I love jobs like this. So we could either make it a sunset, or we could make it a blue sky. We could make it this, we could make it that. She wants this winter scene painted as a summer scene. So I think a nice pretty blue sky would work. A nice gorgeous little blue sky into our painting. So before we paint the pretty blues, we have to put our undercolor in. So we're gonna take our blue, we're gonna cover over where we think the sky might end up being. Right, and if you if you don't cover it, you're gonna have because with the blue here, it's gonna blend with whatever you put over the top. So if you put some white over the top and start to blend it out, you're gonna have this nice soft blue sky. But as soon as you go into a section of black canvas that you haven't pre-covered, that white or whatever color you're using is gonna be so much brighter over here than it is over here. You have to give it a chance to mix in with those colors. Look how we load the brush. Pulling down just a little bit of paint, right? Flip it over, a little bit of paint. Both sides, nice and covered evenly, right? Down here where our water was, let's put in a little bit of blue, just undercolor. And that way with whatever we put over the top, it's going to blend in and be gorgeous. And if we don't even touch it, it'll be this beautiful, really dark blue and black mixture. And that's what we like having around here, is the differences in color, right? If you don't have differences in color, you're just gonna have a very bland painting, and that's no fun. Let's throw a little bit of the blue back here, just so we can get a little bit of light color back behind our trees if we need it. And I'm gonna put the smallest bit over here, but not even go all the way to the corner. It doesn't even need to. Most of this section is gonna be covered in trees. We're really only gonna be able to see this side of the sky. But just in case, right? Just in case, I always do a little bit more than I need to, and it's never really hurt me before. Any little bit of color we put over here is gonna blend in with the grassy bits and stuff, but I don't wanna have too much paint, so I'm gonna leave that section dark. Gonna leave it black, and this is the first time we've ever painted this painting before. I've been looking at it, been studying it, trying to think about how I would paint it, what I would need to do first, right? In painting with Josh, we always start furthest away. So the sky, those far away trees back here, then these closer up trees, these guys, our foreground's gonna come in here. It all comes in layers. So you do a little bit, and 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 you're covering and covering and covering and covering, and then we're gonna get to the bottom. And it's gonna be awesome. All right. Now let's grab a 1-inch brush, Bob Ross 1-inch brush. It doesn't have to be a Bob Ross brush, but that's what I use. I'm gonna grab a little bit of our white paint, both sides again. Look, pulling down, rotating the brush, pulling down again, tapping in if you need to, right? Get it all nice and covered. Don't want it to be too thick in a certain area, but we're not really making clouds or anything. We're just gonna make a bluish sort of light colored sky. So we're gonna go maybe in up here, start to just fill it in, right? We're working from the bottom, and that's gonna allow it to blend with those colors around the top. And the more and more we add and the more we mix, the more it's gonna change into a gorgeous sky. A little bit more of that white. I'll put some over here, right? Just putting it in there. Doesn't really very much matter. Right, over here we're gonna have lots of trees, so you don't have to be super bright, you don't have to be super detailed or anything like that. We're just gonna keep adding white. The more and more we add white, we can change bits of our sky. It's almost like doing your sky in reverse. You have your shadows, and then you're putting in your light areas afterwards. Just letting it blend down, back and forth, pulling it over here, and all of a sudden we have this gorgeous little blue sky starting to show, right? And this isn't what the sky's gonna look like, right? You have to blend it. This looks sloppy and a mess. That doesn't look cool like that. But the more and more we work that white in, very lightly, crisscrossing back and forth. Right? The more little streaks that we get out of there, with our brush, our big house painting brush, as London calls it. Back and forth with our crisscross motions, and all of a sudden it starts to look like a sky. You really got to blend it out though, right? There's no streaks in a plain blue sky. It's just a lot of different color blues, back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. Just like that, very cool. Now we can come in and add clouds if we wanted to. But this one, again, there's not a whole lot of visible part of the sky. It's really not a lot. Let's take a little bit of white on our brush and just maybe down in here. Just really brighten this area up, right? Let it grow out in this like V section right here. We're doing that for a reason, because we're gonna throw a big bunch of, maybe that'll be our cloud. We're gonna throw a big bunch of tree right here, and then all the rest of this stuff's gonna be trees anyway. So maybe that'll be the cloud for our sky. Gorgeous little thing. Let's do one more little bit up here, just in case we can see any little section of cloud. Let's do a little bit up there. Very, very lightly going over these. So super soft, because there's so much blue up there. You don't want to have it blend in with all of that blue right away. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into our sky, right? That's how we made our sky. Very softly over that white, just to flatten it down. Come to the side. Very soft little sky back there. Very cool. All right, let's wash the blue off of these brushes, because we're probably going to end up using them for something else. Probably for something else. Maybe we could pop in our bit of water while we're here. By doing so, let's get a little bit of white on the side of our brush, just the one side. Right? There we go. One side of our brush. And let's come down. We decided our base of our water is going to be about halfway, maybe a little less than half of the canvas. So let me come in here and start popping these down. And then it came down, comes over here. All right, these are our bits of water reflection. And then it comes down over here. Just like that, very firmly pulling it down, flattening it over side to side. Now we have a little bit of water that we can work with, a little bit of reflective surface of our blue sky, and then we can fill it with shadows and cover it and all sorts of stuff. So let's wipe off the blue off of that brush, into the cup, into the trash can, and then into the bucket. Just like that. Comes out nice and clean, gorgeous. And you can tell where that beam is on my canvas right here. It really likes to stand out, so you're going to have to either cover it or go back and blend it out. And the way you can do that, I've found, is if you come back here and stick your hand behind the canvas and just push out a little bit away from that thing, you can blend out those blue lines. You know what I mean? They'll go away the more you do it. The more you do, they will go away. There we go. Leaving the area down here nice and dark, we can put in a couple little bits of detail, some sort of something, right? Always getting blue on my brush. Right after I go to clean it, I see something and then it goes back onto the canvas. There we go. Just like that, dab it off. You wonder why all my brushes have this greenish blue tint. That's why we use a lot of blue around here. Lots of blue. Get that fan brush clean. We're going to use that for some grass and all sorts of stuff. All sorts of stuff. Okie dokie. Had to make sure the camera looked good. Now we're going to add in a whole lot of trees and forest back here. They're very much like a dark brownish in this instance, but we're going to make them kind of colorful. Maybe like a late summer, autumny kind of colorish. So let's get a little bit of our Van Dyke brown, which is the darker color of the browns. Mix that up with our blue, a little bit of our crimson, right? A little bit of our black. Mix them all up into this gross color right here. This real deep, darkish color. It's like a real dark brownish purple, and we added the brown to it. And it'll look black. When you're pulling it out like this, it looks very dark. It looks very black. But there's so many little colors inside here, all mixed in together, that we'll get all these little differences. Now, there looks to be some sort of giant tree sort of off in the distance. So let's make it over here. We're going to come in with our round brush. I'm going to tap it in, loading the bristles just like that. So we got them all nice and in there in different quantities. We're going to come up here and maybe we have, remember, sort of shape your tree how a tree might look. You know what I mean? Don't just put it up there, just blob it up at random. Just sort of shape it how you think it might look off in the wild back there. Right? A little bit like that. Very cool. Just a bunch of mess, right? That's all it is. A bunch of deep, dark shadows back there. All right, let's come over here. Maybe there's another one. Just grow him like he was a tree. All these bushes, all this background color, right? Not using a whole huge amount of paint. All we're trying to do is just leave that little bit of light kind of showing through. This is the reason why it's shining down onto our water down here, right? And there was a few more back in here, little dabs. Don't want to have it be too thick or too heavy. All we're trying to do is just cover up a little bit of that darkness and add just a little bit of difference in color back in here. All we're really doing. Very little amount of paint though. You can see it's not even covering all of the blue as we do it. Very small amounts of paint. Small, 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 because we don't need it to be super thick back here. We don't want it to be too thick. We don't want it to be too much. We still have many, 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 many layers to add on top of all of this, right? So let's take these guys just very softly, flatten them down just a little bit. Don't want to cover up all the cool details. If you swipe over stuff like this, it's going to really drag it up. But just soften it just a little bit. All you really need. All you really need is soften a bit, right? Instead of love. That didn't really fit. There was too many syllables, Josh. I love writing parody songs, but the syllables have to be correct, right? If it's not, and it helps if it rhymes, but it doesn't really need to. Okay, we're gonna go back here. We're gonna do these little autumny colors, right? So a little bit of, let's just start making it up. A little bit of cad yellow. Not too much, a little bit of brown, smallest little bit of brown, just to dull it down just a little bit. Because again, way back here, we don't need a whole lot of details and things, right? Little things so far away that you can't really see, so don't do too much, right? If you do too much, you've done too much, imagine that. Let's change into our cad yellow, right? Again, very small amount of paint right on top of the yellow ochre on the brush, so it's gonna change it slightly. Maybe over here. Just a few little things, different little bits of light, right? It's all our eye is going to make up whatever we can't see back in here. These little differences of light and dark and colors, little different things. Right, let's go into our phthalo green and sap green mix. Right here, and just dab it in again. Maybe down over on this guy, there was a little bit of the greenish color, right? Just little bits, though. We're not trying to cover up all of the dark. Not trying to be so super bright that we can, see everything. That's not what this painting is about. It's about being very soft off in the distance. All right, when we come back in, since we had the yellow and yellow ochre here, why don't we do a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of brown again, just to darken it the smallest little bit. Dab it in, maybe come back in here. We may not even see these guys. Right? Might not even see them once we finish the painting, but we know we painted them. And so if we're not going to really see them, you don't want to put too much. I'm going to go with a little bit of that yellowish color back in here too, just so we have another little bit of bush, another little bit of detail, more light, more something. Something's happening way back off in this bushy area back here, right? Very cool. Very cool. Now, what if we did a little bit of white, a little bit of our green, just to brighten it up, and maybe down around the bottom of some of these guys? Really bright green bushes that live off back here. Again, they don't all have to be the same. You don't want to have them all be, too bright, not enough shadow. You got to leave your dark areas. Remember that. Got to leave our dark areas. Why don't we turn the brush upside down? Maybe put a little bit of that kind of greenish reflection down in here where our bushes were. And we'll take that darker bit. Just kind of redo our tree upside down. Just a little bit of that dark is all you need, right? There's our tree upside down. Take these guys again, pull them straight down from where they are. We'll end up looking like the real close reflections of our trees and bushes back there. Again, go side to side. Just like that. Very neat, very easy. Very simply done. That guy's a little bit too much of the bright green back there. See if we can take any of our dark color, add it in different places, just to change up things. Just to change it up. Grab a little bit of that brownish color, 2 browns, maybe a little bit of yellow, just to see what we got in here. Pull these guys out to the side. Very cool. Far off in the distance. Who knows where that line even continues going, right? We know it's going to come down around here, but we don't know where it goes off here as another piece of land is going to come in. Speaking of which, we need to take these so softly so they don't grow. All those little highlights, 3 hairs and some air. Very soft, but what we're doing is making it blurry. We're making it softer off in the distance so we can add more things on top of it and yet not lose all of those little details back there. So cool. So cool. If you can get it to come across, ooh, it's gonna shine. Oh, it's gonna shine. Just like that. All right. Now, it's very soft back there. It's very much, no textured areas, no anything like that. Nothing crazy. Maybe another little bright spot in there just because it got a little bit too dark. There we go. Littlest bit. Don't want to have too many details back in there because all of our details are going to come in the foreground. Right? What if we got a little bit of dark on our brush back here? Maybe go into the brown. Sorry, I always do it down here where you guys can't see. A little bit of brown, a little bit of dark right into there, onto the brush. And maybe, who knows, there's a few little tree trunk bits that might have been seen. Little branch growing up over here. Again, it's not going to stand out super bright against anything. If anybody sees it, they're going to be really looking hard to try to find where our tree trunks and tree branches are way back here because we don't need a whole lot of detail back there. So don't do too many. Right, a couple little things. Sometimes I like to throw a stick that just pops out. Pops out of our little bush. Very light, with a light hand. Again, try not to make too many details, Josh. It's not going to make a whole lot of difference when we come in with our other trees and things back here. But just in case anybody ever looked hard enough, they may be able to see a few little branches back in there. That's all. That is all. All right. That looks good to me. Perfection, as they say. Now, the next little section is going to come in from down here, and a lot of our trees are going to go back and cover over all this. So we're going to have this big, giant monster tree right here. A couple little things back and forth. It's going to end up looking really neat. Really neat. There we go. Okay, now we've got our dirt. And that one, she had snow, but since it's a summer scene, I'm going to take a little bit of our liquid white, just a little bit of liquid white, right? Just on one side of our grass. Maybe grab a little bit of those yellows, bring them over here, just so it's not all the same kind of green. Go upside down. Start tapping in little things that live off on that little river bank. Right? Not covering everything. Doesn't need to cover it all. Because again, you can go in with the smallest little swipes, little quick swipes. Just like that. Bring that grass to life. Bring it to life. Bam, 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 bam. Any little bit. Now we can take that same brush. Instead of going up like this, we can turn it upside down. Pop in just a little bit of maybe a little reflection of that grass. Pull it down. Little bits, so the grass isn't going to be like super reflective onto your water, but just a littlest bit in case anyone's looking. Bam, just like that. Very soft. Very soft. You change it how you want to see it. If you don't like the way mine looks, then you change it to how you want to see it. How does your little thing look, right? Maybe down in here we had a little bit of dirt kind of around where the water is. So we're going to add a little bit of darkness in there. Kind of maintaining that angle, that same angle it was going at. swipe this guy over just a little bit. And now we're going to have that disconnect between those bright colors and our water. And we can now tell where the stream is coming in from. It's coming in from back here, rolling along. All these little dips and drabs and things that come down way off in the distance back there. Scrubbing in the little differences is all, right? Little things. Don't really have to worry about them too much. Right, swipe them over to the side. You can see over here where we're landing, leaving all these little things. It doesn't matter. We're going to cover all this stuff anyway. Leaving it all. And the more and more you swipe, the less of your reflections are going to show through. So be careful. That's great right there. That is fantastic. All right, now we need to pop in a little section that's going to sit up here in our foreground. And in order to do that, why don't we do this? We'll grab a little bit of our dark, our brown, crimson, blue, just pull them all down into this same little dark area. You can always clean it up and redo it again. All right, but we need to make something that's going to come down and pop out and get rid of all these things, right? So we have our new little bit of land as it's coming in. It's going to pop out into the water over there. We'll do that smaller with a smaller brush. But we're going to cover up this side and just throw some paint in there, right? Just so we have a little bit. It's not dry canvas. There's light and dark, different colors of paint. And then we can pop things out and grow in from over here into our water. And then the same thing back here, using those same 4 dark colors on our same brush. Our new hill and new horizon line is going to come in at this angle and pop down, just like that. So we only show a little bit of the water. Everything else over here, this is now the flat horizon of our side over here, right? Coming down in, all this stuff gets covered up, which is why we do those things off in the distance first. You have to do those things first. This guy's gonna come in, it's gonna start to grow. Little bits will pop out, it'll be longer than other pieces will be, but all of a sudden we get a very cool little summer scene coming together right here. With a little brook, a little babbling brook as it's coming down. I got this guy, then we're gonna come over here, then our land is gonna end up coming and covering over some of these reflections to make it stand out in our foreground, as this is gonna be reflective of that. So that'll be really neat. That should be really neat. Now we put our far off distance back there, right? These ended up looking like bushes versus grass, but whatever, it doesn't matter. You decide what it looks like, right? So now we've come in with our next little layer, our next little bit of horizon, but it only really dropped down like an inch, right? It didn't come down a whole huge amount. All depends on the angles of our land and what's going on. So there's a tree back off in here. There's another tree way off here, but he doesn't have too much detail. The main detail is on the center tree in this aisle right here. So why don't we take a little bit of our dark color, right? Just on a fan brush. I like using a fan. It makes it easy, because you can get a very thin trunk, and then the more you push in, the thicker your trunk will grow. Okay, so let's say off here, there's a guy right back there. Comes down and lives on our little hill. Right, load up our brush again. Gotta load it again. Way off back here, there was a smaller guy. So he's off there. It all depends on where you end up blending out your base of your trunk. Pushes it either closer or further away. And then we have our giant. He's gonna come in from the whole top of the canvas and cover up a lot. So we're gonna bring him to, he's gotta be thicker than the thickest parts of this tree, even up here at the top. Let's bring him down, but I don't want him to be so super thick that it, cuts in and just takes up too much of our background and stuff. There we go. Now right here, into that darkness, we're gonna put our same little bottom bit of tree, and that's gonna cover our water section, right? It almost looks like one big tree. It's not, it's multiple trees. There we go. Now we're gonna build off of those guys. Let's see what we're gonna do. This guy right here, he's gonna have to grow just a little bit. So back into our paint thinner, right? Onto our palette. So it's right here, gets all nice and sloppy. We have to hold it very thin, right? If you don't think you have enough, go back. You can't. Bam, right there. You're not gonna hurt it by putting on too many or too much. Right? Wiggle it through, kind of pull it out, So and twist it so you get this little tip, and a sharper tip to it. Right, like that. We'll come over here, start to decide. Maybe we had a couple little branches that came out. Started to cut in front of our greenery back there and different things. And depending on the amount of thinner on your brush, it may come off easily. It may not want to come off at all. And if it doesn't want to come off your brush and stick to the canvas, it means you don't have enough thinner on your brush. Your paint isn't thin enough to stick to what's going on back here. Right? A couple little branches, nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. And while we're going, why don't we give them a little bit of highlight, a little bit of brown, a little bit of cad yellow, mix them together. Right? Very flat. Push it out, it's very flat. So it's not a whole lot of paint because you don't need a whole lot. Scrape up a little bit, maybe over here. We just touch it and kind of pull away just on the one side, just a little. So he's got a little bit of detail, a little bit of highlight as he goes. You don't have to see the whole bit of tree, right? You're never going to see the whole bit. Maybe this guy back here, same thing, just a little though. You don't need to cover his whole area. Go back in, a little bit more paint thinner into our dark color paint. And maybe this guy had a few little branches off. Over there, here and there and here, over there. So you might see him, you might not. It all depends on the angle you're looking at, what you're gonna see, what you aren't gonna see. And then we're gonna end up covering these with our darker foliage. Right, maybe, just maybe, we use our fan brush. We get that dark color mixture right here on the both sides of our brush. And who knows, maybe there's a couple little things that ended up growing off of this guy. Little bits, right? But that darker color and thicker paint, it's going to stand out in front of those thinner layers that we had put on way back there. All right, switch to another fan brush. Go back into our liquid white. Over here into our greenish color, not super liquidy, but it's a little thinner. And come back in, pop in little minute differences in color back here. Again, it's not the focal point of the whole piece. The focal point's going to be on this side. These are just kind of background trees, just filler. It's all filler back there. All stuff for your eyes to go, ah, I see. Right, a couple little things, a little bit of greenery here and there, because this big tree is going to cover over a lot of that stuff. Our big tree in the front is going to take precedent here. So let's grab up a little bit more of that brown and yellow color. Make my favorite color bark. Look at this, it's so gorgeous. Don't want to cover up too much though. Right? You mix it too well, and then you don't have all these differences in color. That's the fun part. Take this guy, come over here, just very lightly, kind of on a downward swiping angle, right? Just put in a little bit of brown on him. Just a little. Just like that, right? We use that darker color. We swipe it on like that with our fan brush so it leaves little streaks and little areas where our paint can grip onto, you know what I mean? And create the trunk, and create the bark. Just like that, very cool. The more and more you add, the brighter it will become, but the less little differences in color you're gonna have. So be careful with how bright you wanna make it. And come back with the other side with a darker color, right? You can't have it be the same. Even that's too much the same. So we're gonna come back and darken it, right? Back over here. See the difference now? So you have a light side and a dark side. But the dark side isn't just all your dark shadow color. It's a little bit darker brown mixed in with that darker shadows. Right? Just like that, very softly, pulling it to the side, letting it mix, letting it blend, letting it figure itself out. What color does it want to be? It'll tell you. Now we're going to come back without any paint. No paint on the brush or the knife. All right, going to take the lighter side that we had touched already and drag it in to the darker side. Letting it blend together. Trying to keep my big head out of your way. There we go. Little places, like this place, a little bit brighter. right? The more and more we blend it, the darker and darker it becomes. But you gotta have your dark side, so don't let it grow too much. There we go. Little things, be this super textured little tree up in the front. All right, let's come in here. Get a little bit more paint thinner and we'll create some branches of this big tree. Right, let's see. He had a whole big giant one coming off. Kind of cut in front of that. Right, which is why you just put a little bit of color back there is all you need. You don't have to have this crazy big amount of paint on your brush or on your canvas way back there, right? Because all it is just it's a little bit of color to look through. Look behind, look through. What's happening over here? And this guy has so many little branches, it's crazy. It's gonna go off this way, we'll come through there. A little bit bigger one, cut through that tree. Go over there, cut through that tree. Just a whole bunch of little stuff happening on this guy. There's so many little branches. This tree was like really wanted to grow. Really cool though. I love it. I love it. There we go. All right, don't want to go down too far. Don't want to pull too hard. Don't want to stretch it too far. Right? Don't want to have too much paint on your brush. But you do have to have a few little things, right? This guy, maybe he had his tree roots. Got to have some shadows back into our tree roots back here. Then we may throw a big old bush down around the bottom of him. Very lightly pulling out. Very cool. Very, very cool. Big old tree, that's for sure. So now we can come in with our liner brush. All right, I was using just a little micro fan brush just because it's a bit bigger and it would go a little bit quicker. We'll come in with I need to get a new script liner is what it is. So if you guys could go to my Amazon store or my Amazon wish list, I have all sorts of little brushes you guys could help me with and send them my way so I can keep painting, right? There we go. Little brush, little branches. Right? You gotta have enough paint thinner on there though, or it will not transfer onto the canvas. It's gotta be thin. Going across our tree trunks and all sorts of stuff, we gotta be thin, right? You can crisscross right over the front. Make all these cool little things and little tiny details and all sorts of stuff, but if it's not thin, it's not gonna stick, and then you're gonna have to push harder, and then you're gonna make a bigger branch than you wanted to, and that's why it didn't look as cool as it always does, because you pushed a bit too hard on that one, and it had to grow too far. There we go. A couple little things, right? Some of the times, again, if you don't have enough paint and thinner, that right kind of mixture on your brush, you'll push through the paint, but it won't deposit anything off of your brush, and you'll have this little phantom limb, right? There we go. Cool little thing. Just little minute, small little differences about the angle, about the thickness, about where the tree branch wants to grow, what it's going to look like. Very cool. Very, very cool. Right? Scraggly old tree, this guy. He's a scraggly old guy. Very neat though. Right through the trunk. But again, we didn't have enough paint thinner on the brush, so it just dug a trench. There we go. Now we can go in and add our detail. Add our darkness. Fill in those little empty spaces with that little change, that little difference in color. Very cool. All right, let's get a little bit of brown and white. Right on the brush. A little bit of thinner, make it extra thin. Because now we're going to have it try to stick in different places to the other branches that we just made. I'm going to have a little bit of highlight on these guys. Smallest little things though, you don't want to have too much. You have too much, it's not going to work. And you're going to go, Josh, that didn't really work. That thing you tried to teach me. I go, well, what happened? And you tell me, and then I go, well, this is what happened. Wasn't thin enough, wasn't this, wasn't that. So it's all a learning process, right? That's all it really is. What did I do last time to make it look so cool versus what can I do this time to make it look like I did last time, right? How do I do that again? You go back and you go, okay, I think I put this on top and then I tried something new and I did this and then I might have done over here, or I pulled this in a certain direction, then all of a sudden it looked really great. And you're like, oh, I gotta remember to do that next time, right? If I do that next time, it might turn out really fantastic. All right, now, I don't wanna add too much foliage again to these trees, these little branches up in the front. Just because it's a summer scene doesn't mean they need to be chock full of stuff. Okay, so maybe in places where it may look right, out here, I'll pop in a couple little things, little bits. I don't want to cover over too much of my far off tree back there. It's going to get confused with what's going on. A couple little dabs, little things, little branches here and there, right? They can grow all sorts of ways. They can grow across a tree. They can do all sorts of things. Doesn't very much matter. Put some down here. Just a little thing coming out to say hello. Well, hey guys, what's happening? I'm here. I'm here. Right there, another little shadowy bit, right? Doesn't have to cover up so much. I don't want to cover up all the gorgeous colors back there. I'm sure the client doesn't want me to cover up all these gorgeous colors either. So, all depends on what you think and how you think you can make it look right and not overdoing it too much. Right, let's get a little bit more of that liquid white. Back into our green again, not too much, not too sloppy, not too crazy. Come up here and maybe every so often dab in a little bit of that green onto our branches, coming down, not trying to cover up all of the dark, right? Not trying to do too much. Flipping it over when it starts to get too hard to come off. Doesn't want to start coming off, you flip it over, right? Just like that. A couple little things here and there. Little light areas, little dark areas. A little bit more green on the brush. Oh yeah, there we go. It's starting to come together, but don't want to lose all of your darkness either, right? You got to have little areas of dark inside your branches, no matter what. Got to have the darkness in there. So don't cover up all of your dark. Right? Very cool. Cool little bit of tree over here. Very neat. Coming together nicely. Let's wash these brushes off. We can get started on the other side. Let's get started on the other side. Yeah, very cool. Very scraggly. Very textured. Very cool off in the background. All the different beautiful colors. It's fantastic. Fantastic. We've got to leave our water back here. We're going to come down. We're going to pop in little bits of land. Little different things. Right? Maybe underneath here. Our grass started to pop out. It started to come down in little different things. Little bits of grassy area. Just adding texture to our little bit, right? Just a little bit of texture, so when we go back with our liquid white, it'll actually come off and stick to something, like it did back in there, like it does right here, right? It's just gonna be a little different color. Now, what if we had just a little touch, we can feed it in back here, that brownish color. Just pulling out a little bit. Just because it's never all green or it's never all yellow, it's never all the same color. So add little differences in there. A little bit of yellow, maybe it can start to come out, pops in around our thing, but I don't want to do too much yellow in our grass either. Right, very lightly, very softly, so super soft, swiping those guys down, just so they're a little different. They're not the same texture as the tree limb, so they're not going to stand out as much, right? And come back in. Why don't we throw a little bit of green with that yellow? Just change it up. All the greens. Why not? Start coming in here. Our next little area pops out. Just dabbing in all these little differences, little different greens and yellows together. Leaving all the dark, the black. You don't want to cover all of it. You don't have too much, right? There we go. Just the smallest bit down back there. Smallest bit down right here in the front. And then again, pulling the littlest, tiniest little piece, just so we have any little bit of reflective kind of color of the grass. Slide it up. Bam. Just like that. Very cool. You can take different pieces, again with those little short little swipes, and it'll really start to look like grass growing. You can go back in, change up colors, add in different little things, different little heights, all sorts of little grassy bits, little bits of texture, little bits without, little things growing, all sorts of stuff. A little bit of that color off to the side, very cool. Very cool. So lightly, so lightly. Just to, if anything, it'll just help it dry a little bit faster if it's a little bit more light. All right, where's that palette knife? Let's come in here, let's grab up that dark color. Go in and start to decide where my land was. Right, it's off there, a little bit. A little bit in here as it popped out. Start to come around. Right? And these things also can be little things in our water, little disturbances, little rocks, little ripples, all sorts of little things that start coming down our little stream as it starts to pick up speed, right? We don't want to have too many of them though. We don't want to lose all of our little details and stuff back there. We painted all these gorgeous little details. We don't want to lose them all. There we go. A little bit of dirt, a little bit of something. So when we come in with our white and liquid white mixture to make our water line, all right, a little bit of blue in there too. We can come back in, we can decide maybe our water came up over here. Get this back in there. All of a sudden it just starts to grow and you see things and you're like, ooh, look cool if a little wave was over here or a little thing was over there. Or if more water came in different places around the edges of our grass, right? Just make sure they're straight. All your little water lines and little waves, just make sure they're straight. Get all these little things, little bits of water as it collects and pools in different places. Ripples. We're not keeping the ripples all in the same place though. See what I mean? They're all just slightly different. Even on their angle, their shadow, their color, they're all just a little bit off. Very cool. Let's take some of these guys, see if we can't pull them down in the front just a littlest bit again. Get these very cool little things happening. Now areas where you just have a little bit of white looks kind of funky, but if you throw a little bit of dark line under there, now all of a sudden you've got a lip that the water is climbing over, which is why it looks a little quote unquote funky, right? Very soft, very like no hairs and some airs over there, right? Very, very soft and off in the distance, very blurry, very colorful, but very blurry. All that water rushing, little areas of darkness where they make sense. Right? Can't have too much light. It's not going to make sense. Got to have little bits of darkness in there. Little areas where ripples are. Very cool. And areas where it's nice and still, it's soft and flat back there as well. Kind of neat. Kind of neat. Again, a little bit of dark line. Wherever there's too much of a white line, you put a little bit of dark line in there. And our water is going to look a little different than theirs, but it's summertime. Summertime. Had to pool in back there. Very cool. You notice the differences in yellow and green and dark and kind of brownish green and different greens and this green and that green. All these different greens help create that one sort of grass is green look, right? You have all these little different colors in there. All right, now we're gonna come down. We had a couple little baby trees lived over here, just with our fan brush. Off in the distance, really don't see a whole lot of these guys. Like maybe these are the tops. We might just leave them all in shadow back in here, right? Just covering different bits of our greenery because we didn't see everything way back there. It's all covered by our big giant foreground tree that's going to sit up in here. So let's decide what we're going to do And maybe off in the distance, if we can have just a few, get a little bit of that brown, the two browns together, right? Come up here again. Doesn't matter. Swipe a little bit of yellow in there too, just to brighten it up, just a little bit. Maybe a little white, just to brighten it up, just a little bit. There we go. And then off here, we have many tree trunks that live back in here. All right, so just pull down all these lines, different directions, different things that live off, very thin, very thick, all sorts of little stuff that lives back there. And that's just the tree trunks that we can see, right? Everything else, it's too thick, it's too much foliage, all sorts of stuff back there that we can't see, right? And then all of a sudden, our mound starts to grow. It starts to come down this way. So what if we take a little bit of that green, maybe a little bit of the yellow, and start popping in little bits of grass as they come down. Start to grow around our tree. Little things, don't jump too much, right? Just tap, 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 tap. It's gonna leave little differences, come down. Do whatever you wanna do on the top of your big hill over here, right? In this instance, we have this one that's kind of creates this little bit of a rounded walkway as it comes off over here, like a little path we can come up to get to the top of these guys. Just like that. So you have little differences even in the change in elevation of your own little thing here. Very cool. All right, we don't even need to fill the tops of the trees back here. You really don't. What we really need to focus on is this giant that's that takes up the foreground left, this big monster double tree trunk thing. Okay, so from over here, I'm gonna come down. It's gonna hit the tree right there. And then I'm gonna load up again and come down just about like this. Bang into our tree, and then this tree's got a really wide trunk. Really wide trunk. There we go. Boom, just like that. Get these big, faraway trees back there. Giant limbs that we can build off of. They make this V shape as they come into the tree. And then we get all these little details as the tree starts to come down and grow, you know, off into the distance back there. Very cool. Got to remember to leave the grass at the base of those guys back there if you want to have your big trees stand out as in front of those, right? And then we can add all sorts of different things onto that, all sorts of tree branches, and however you want yours to look, it's going to be fantastic. Maybe this guy over here, another nice big tree sat right down the front. Whole width of the big 2-inch, the big fan brush though. The whole width of it. Push it down, fill it in, make sure it's nice and thick. And then we can pop in a little bush. We can do our little foreground things over here. It's going to be fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Let's get a little bit. We're going to come out upside down with our brush and start to decide where our little bit of land lives, right? It's got to live somewhere. So we're just dabbing it in, a little bit of texture, a little bit of grass, a little bit of shadow, a little bit of something here, there, everywhere. Right? And then all of a sudden it's going to come down here in the front, and that's going to be the new section of land as we come over here. So all that water that we had put in, that reflective stuff, all for naught. Just like that. We got this very cool little thing. We can drop a huge bush over here in the bottom, do all sorts of stuff, and all of a sudden our piece has come together as this gorgeous little thing. I don't like how straight it is over here, so we're going to adjust the level of the, here we go. See, just by changing up the smallest little thing, a little bit of that greenery for our grass, a little bit more even, right? Got to have it stand out, lift it up, little tiny things, right? Very, so soft, so softly, so softly. I don't want to get much of that into the center there. Go back to that yellowy color, just so when we come in and pop it and then do the same thing again, it's gonna mix, it's gonna change, it's gonna give us all those gorgeous little grassy colors. See what I mean? Gorgeous little grassy colors. Bam, 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 bam. Come back with our our liquid white, we had our water line. Scrape it in as it's coming down the edge, right? However you want. And you can always come back, adjust the level again, change it to however you like to see yours, right? Don't have to be discouraged on your first try. You can always go wipe it away and do it again. Very cool. A little bit more of that liquid white. Let me come back here and we'll start to cut in where we think our water might try to come and live on this little piece of grass back here. It's trying to cut in all the time and say, hey you, I need to be there. My name is water and I need to be here. I don't want to come down too much. Not too much. And if you don't have enough liquid white, it's not going to act or look like water. There we go. Little things, little disturbances in the water, little bits, little here, little there. It comes in again, and we can cover over whatever we don't like. All right, so we go back with that grassy bit, and then poof, we cover over all that water because we're not going to see the water line down here. Our grass is too tall. It's going to cover up all of the stuff down here, right? You're not going to see what the water looks like. You'd have to go and look over to see the water line. So don't paint it down here. Never going to see it this far down. You will not see it. So do not worry, my friends. People tend to try to overdo it all the time. Even me. I'll try. I'm guilty. I try to overdo it many times. Many times we try to overdo things to make them look a little bit better. And then what happens? You go back and you go, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. It looked so good before, and now look what I have done, right? And you get mad at yourself. So, the way I like to teach, I don't want it to be hard for you. If it's hard for you, then you're not going to do it. You're not going to want to continue to learn. You're going to go to someone else's channel because Josh's videos are too hard for me, right? No, wrong. These videos are very simple. They're very easy to do, and they're very personal to you. What is yours going to look like? It doesn't matter what mine looks like. I'm teaching you how to paint yours. What does yours look like? Does yours have more waves, less waves, smaller waves, taller waves? Does yours have a little waterfall back here? Because it can. It can do whatever you want, right? It doesn't have to be anything, like even here. I mean, it wouldn't match the photo, but we couldn't put a waterfall into this one, but you can step it down very lightly. Step, 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 step. And you can imagine yourself standing right where we're standing and looking out and seeing it that way. If your water line's way up here, you're gonna look like you're looking at this raging river that's going to need a few waterfalls, right? But not in this instance. A little babbling brook, just dribbling over. Very cool, very neat, very soft. Very soft. Cool little things, right? Very neat little things happen when we start to mess around and play around and pull, and you swipe one time and you go, oh, look what I did. How do I do that again? Right. Swipe these guys very lightly from the center back into the grass, just like that. Very soft. Very soft. They have to be softer the further away they are, for sure. You don't want to be dealing with that nonsense where you got a real thick water line way back here and then the one up here is real thin. It's not going to make sense to your brain. This guy's going to pop out even more. Just because I want him to grow out into the water just a little bit more, right? It's a good year. A lot of water. Good year. Everything's growing nice and thick, and you can change your perspective on stuff and change what it looks like. And then maybe this guy's a bush. He's not just a piece of grass. He's a nice, gorgeous, bright yellow ochre and cad yellow, maybe the touch of brown just to give that kind of dusky color, popping it into our brush, and then we're coming over here and we're going, oh my, it's this gorgeous little thing that's living out here, very soft, not trying to cover up all of the dark areas, right? Very soft little thing. And if it goes too yellow, because you tapped it too many times, go back in, make a mess with your fan brush, right? And then go back in, reload your brush again, softer. Soft little things, leaving the bottom dark. Don't have to see everything. You don't need the bottom down there to be super dark. Right? Sometimes it's fun too. You can take a little bit of your liquid white, chuck a couple little branches in there. Let it mix though, because it's going to be very bright white, and then the more and more you go over it, the more it's going to mix with the color underneath. It's going to change. See that? Very cool. Don't just leave it super bright white. That's not what you want to do. A little bit of our whitish, bluish waterline maybe came out here, and all of a sudden, that's our new little area of land. It's that simple. You can change the whole layout. You can move mountains. You can move rivers. You can change things how you want to see them. Just like that. Pull those things out together. Very cool. Very neat little thing, right? If this is all super bright in the light, I like that this is all really dark green in the shadows, right? We can pop in bright green bushes and stuff and have them really stand out. So don't overdo your greenness back there. That's not what you want. Now, I'm going to come back in. I'm going to make a few more little tree trunky branches. A little bit of paint thinner, not too much. Right? Maybe this guy is going to come back and go up there. It goes off over here, over there. Maybe it comes down this way, cuts across all these other trees. All depends on what you want yours to look like. What's going to be the best look for yours, right? What happens? What's the best looking version of your tree? Because it doesn't have to look like my tree. It really doesn't. Keep telling you, you don't want it to look like my tree. And again, why didn't we put all, we didn't fill all that background with all that color? Because we knew it was going to look like this, right? Gorgeous little thing. I'm going to take a little bit more of that yellow ochre bit and stick it on this bit of tree right behind our, just a couple little things way out on the end. That tree's trying to grow up there, trying to get some of that light. Okay, now we've gone over our tree trunk, or our branch, my man, right? Cut him back in front of that, have him stand out. Have it stand out. You can always extend the length of your trunk if your branches get too big and you're like, oh, it's kind of looks weird. It wouldn't really hold up that much weight. Extend your trunk a little bit. Right? Take those darks, cut them across the lights that we put off in the background. Right? It's a change. It's a play of light and dark. That's all art is. If you want something to pop and you want it to be dark, it needs to be light behind it. If you want it to be light, it needs to be dark behind it. That's why we put all these colors out to begin with. All right, let's come back into our tree trunky color, but not the same bright tree trunk color that's in the sun. These guys are in the shade. So let's throw in a little bit of that brown. Right, just let it mix in. Doesn't all have to be the same. Watch, we're gonna go over it a few times. Changes it, right? Mixes it in, but it's not all just dark. You can see there's something there. There's a different color. It's not that deep dark shadow. There's a little bit of brown in there. Maybe it lights up in some areas because the sun is peeking through the trees. And all because we had a little bit more brightness buried underneath the paint. Not anything, on purpose. But it works out like that sometimes. There we go. I'm gonna extend that branch anyway. Gotta make him stretch further. Sometimes things work out for you and you're like, holy cow, how did I do that? I don't even know, but I need to try to recreate that next time, right? Take our tree branch, just like a mountain. Pull it down. Right? Letting them blend in, change, go from light to dark. You have to let it work itself. Work itself, baby. Work your magic. A little bit of line on the edge. How do you want yours to look? That's all that really matters. Do you want it to be bright? Do you want it to be dark? Does the sun hit yours, at a better angle? Does it hit it over here? Does it make it brighter if we add this or add that? But don't have all your branches be the same. That's why I like mixing the colors separately. And then we don't have these areas where all of the trunks of the trees are all the same color. Yeah, it's starting to grow. Trees starting to come together. And you can use your big knife or your small knife or whatever knife you want. Right? Just let it mix. Let it grow. Let it change. Come in with a bit of that darker color on the backside. Just so we have some thickness to our trunk. Right? Some texture. And then those colors will mix in. The more and more we go over them, we start to mix, they start to change, they start to grab at different areas because the light and the dark are playing on each other. Very cool. Another little thing. I'm not even going to add too many branches off of this guy. Very neat. Just a big, tall, giant tree in there. Big monster. All right, see if we can't take some of this texture and pop out a couple little tree branches in there. Very neat. Some off of this guy, some off of this guy. Right? Doesn't have to be all perfect. Doesn't have to be all the same. Right? Little bits, little things that connect things to things. That's all we're doing. We're connecting some things to some other things. That's really it. Right? And it's not a big crazy change. It's just little things, little pieces of light. Maybe this guy got a little brighter up here. Who knows? Right? Just by changing it, just by pulling a different, one more time, 2 more times, see what happens. If you go back, you can always make it dark again, right? Go over this guy. Let those dark colors mix. Let them change. See what happens. Let the branch grow. Maybe you had another branch come out over here, just like that, right? Or another one that popped straight across that bit of branch right there. All because we can see it in our brains, right? We can see it, and now that we saw it, we want to make it happen. Very cool. Just like a mountain down here on the tree. Very neat. A lot of texture in this one. Really cool. Very cool. But make sure they're different. Make sure they're all slightly different. That's the goal. Slight differences. Now we have to add a bit of darkness and shadowy foliage before we add our very bright colors, right? So out here, let's just pop in just like that. There's this little, long little thing, little branch, all sorts of stuff can be happening inside there. More little bits. I'm going to pop in just a little bit of dark texture right here, just by globbing it on. Right? There's a little bit that grew down there, some that grew off of this guy. Trying to get down and reach the water. That's what this tree is trying to do. Back up in here, we cover up some of the favorite parts of our tree way off in the distance. And you can cover up this whole thing. You could do whatever you wanted to do, right? It's a summer painting. It's gorgeous. I just don't want to lose all of the blue, and I don't want to let these 2 trees touch, because then it's going to be hard to discern where the branches are coming from. Is this part of this tree or is it part of that tree? You know what I mean? A little bit back in there, a little bit up in here. All this stuff happening. All these dark areas are now a chance to add little bits of highlight, right? So I think we're done with that fan brush. We can finally wash him off. He's going to need like a triple rinse, this guy. Triple rinse, and he's still dark. I'm gonna have to redo that at the end of the show. All right, let's take a little bit of that liquid white on the end of our other fan brush, go into our yellowish, greenish, right? Not all the same color, differences. And then come up here, maybe we just start popping in little pieces of the puzzle. Little bright areas, little darker areas, little things, right? Where these trees are going to stand out in front of every other tree behind it because they're a different color, they're much brighter. So wash this brush off, it's going to go very dark very fast. We want it to stay light. So get our liquid white again, just a small amount because we already have a lot up in here. A little bit more of that, a little bit of our green, just to keep it sort of similar. And maybe up here, we start popping in little things as they live and grow. Little dabs, little bits of light, little things. What part of your tree gets lit up? You know what I mean? What part doesn't? What part grows across the tree and comes out at a different spot? Very cool little things happening in here. All right, let's change it up and go a little bit greener. Maybe this side it popped in, just had a little bit more greenery on that side of his trunk. For whatever reason, he got more water, He's lower on the tree, so it's greener, it's more bright. Little things start growing from everywhere, all about the tree, all over it. Fantastic. All right, again, we're not covering up all of our little dark areas. We're leaving little things. You know what I mean? You can cover as much of your branches as you want. It's no preference. You want to cover your branch? Cover your branch. Do it. Cover all over the whole tree. You could do the whole thing. Really doesn't matter. Okay, we're going to come in here. We're going to add little bits around the bottom of our tree. Maybe it starts to grow up into the trunk. Who knows? And then at a different angle, they start to slide away, going down this way, right? And all that's going to do, very lightly, we're going to swipe them up, right? And then these guys, I'm going to pull them down at this rounded angle like that. I want it to go down and away from the thing, so we have like a little indication of a little path. Maybe you could walk up between all these little things. Maybe, and then off in the distance, little bits in a rounded motion, right? Like a pendulum. Coming down, we're tapping. Bop, 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 right? Go down a little pendulous motion. So we get down to the front, and then everything starts to flatten out. Cool little things start to happen. Maybe way off in the distance back there. Get some that lighter color, but it's further away, so we're not going to see a lot of stuff back here. You know what I mean? We're not going to see a whole huge amount of detail because all of our detail is coming up into the front, the frontals. Nice soft little summer scene back here. It's fantastic. Fantastic. Cool little things, right? All about differences in texture and color. What happens, what's over there, what's over here. Now we got to work our way around the front. I want to put like a big, right? This one's got like a bush over here. You put like a rock. You do something. Got to hide this tree. So why not? We'll grab our dark colors, all 4. Josh's favorite 4 dark colors right here. All right, just to make a big sloppy mess. We're gonna come over. We're gonna cut past our tree, cut into our grass. Come over there, and then poof, all of a sudden we filled up this whole bottom section with a big giant boulder that seemed to have fallen sometime in the winter and landed down here. Since this is a summer scene and the boulder wasn't here before in the wintertime, somehow it's come down and crashed, laid down here, right? It's like a horizontal, circular swipes. They leave cool little bits of paint that are gonna grab our highlight color, okay? Very neat little things. Very neat little things. All right, now we're gonna come back, make up a little bit more of that rocky color. It's the same sort as our kind of barky color. Brownish, is there any more crimson? There we go, a little bit. Maybe a touch of like bright red. Just to change it up a bit. And these little differences, right? Won't be the same color as all of our tree branches, that's for sure. Start to rounding, turning, pulling in different directions, letting it grip how it wants to grip, right? Different things. It doesn't all have to be the same. You're gonna have lots of little rounded edges in a rock, and dark areas and light areas and things where, you know, you can't really see. And you're not supposed to be able to see down into the deepest parts of the rock, right? Never gonna see down that far. Okay, let's come back here, grab up our yellow, grab up our green, start to change the color of our very foregroundy grass up here. We're gonna start to pop in little different things, but leaving the shadows. We don't need everything to be super bright, right? Maybe the light shine through and it hit an area that's brighter than the other area, but it doesn't all have to be the same amount of brightness. Very much, just like that. And take our brush very lightly, very, very, very lightly. So it just grabs different things at different times. Just like so. Now, I want to put one big old bush, maybe right up here, not right there, but right up here. So we're going to scrape up a whole lot of this dark color, dab it in, come in here, really texture it out. right? Very textured little piece. Maybe it comes and it grows. This wants to be a bigger bush. Like, hey dudes, come over here. Grow up real big and strong. Be with the rest of everybody else, right? Get all the dark color off of that brush. All the darkness. Now we're going to come back in. Go into our yellow white liquid ochre. Yellow ochre liquid white. Dab it. Turn our brush over. Come up in here and start to build our bush how we would like to see it. Right? Little differences here, there, everywhere, but having that darkness down around the bottom as well. Gotta have it remain dark down there. If it's not dark enough, there's gonna be no depth. And if there's no depth, there's nowhere for the little critters to hide and all the little stuff to grow and the tree branches and everything else. There's no room for anything if you don't leave any white area or any dark area for our stuff to hide down there, right? There we go. Little tree branch coming out above. I love doing that. It just pushes everything back just a little bit. Gotta push it back just a touch, right? And by having something come up and jolt out of the bottom, out of the foreground, that really helps push things backward as far as our water. There we go. Cool little things. Little bits of darkness and light. It's all art is. A little bit of darkness, a little bit of light. There we go. Very cool. Very, very cool. I like this one. Super neat. All right, let's put the old signature in. And then we'll put the birds in, then we'll be done. I don't like this brush. All right. So funny when I can't even paint my own signature in front of everyone. Oh my heck. It's gonna be the lightest color rock I've ever seen. There we go. That works. Problem with using liquid white when you sign is it wants to mix in with all the other colors that are there. So, all right, well, unfortunately you can't buy this one because it's already sold, but it's fantastic. I love it. Lots of detail, lots of depth, beautiful little summer scene, and I hope the clients love it. So, we're gonna go take a picture and send it to them and see what they think, and yeah, everything will be great. So, until we see you guys again on the next one, take care, have the rest of a good day, and pow!